Live from Kakariko Village. Broadcast throughout the Retroverse, transmitted to the real world via a maze of wires connecting a Super Nintendo to a Wii, to a Wi-Fi network, and finally to the internet. The Techno Funk Boy presents the Retro Zoo Super Show. Now here are your hosts, Kai and Steven.
And welcome to the Retro Zoo Super Show. I am one of your hosts, Kai.
And I'm Steven.
So I'm actually super pumped about this episode. We have Seth Skorkowsky coming on. He's one of my absolute favorite YouTubers, and this actually we're going to try to start doing like a thing where we get more content creators and including YouTubers, which there's quite a few I follow. So hopefully we can nab them on the show. But otherwise, I mean, before that, how has your week been going?
Oh man, it's been going good. I broke my phone. That kind of sucked.
Why did you do that? That's dumb. Don't do that.
I was doing this delivery, and I knocked my phone out of my pocket, and then I couldn't find it, and I went back, and I still couldn't find it, and then later on I did the phone finder thing, and I saw where it was. So this was later in the evening, and I went back and I found it, but I think I had run over it, and so the whole face of my phone is just like shattered, and it still kind of works, but that was a bummer, and it kind of got me thinking, like, I need a real job. I can't do this chump work anymore. So I did actually nab an interview. I might actually have to duck out here. I know.
You set the interview to when we're recording? We're going it live?
Well, I thought we would start a few minutes earlier, but we didn't, and I just got a call back saying that I did get the second interview, so I really need to go. It's this something Brown, this company, I guess it's a real estate company, or I'm not sure too much about it, but they're hiring, so I'm going to go check it out, and I'm going to try to make it back before the interview's over, because I really also want to talk to Seth and just see what he has to say about everything. So but in the meantime, you're a pro, so
okay, yeah, great, just dump the interview on me. I'll be fine. It's fine.
Hey, how many interviews have I actually helped you with?
Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, well, Drum is giving me the metal clamper hand up, meaning Seth is on the line, and so we're gonna jump on that.
Yeah, I gotta go. I gotta go anyway. So
all right,
I'll
cool.
Be back.
Good luck.
All right, man. Thanks.
So with us on the line, we have Seth Skorkowsky. I really appreciate you joining us. First of all, congratulations, because you just won the ENnie for, was it Best Online Content?
Yes.
That's fantastic. So first of all, tell us about that.
The ENnie Awards?
Yeah.
It was great. So I showed up and, I'll back up. I went to Gen Con as part of the Writer Symposium as a guest author. Mm-hmm. And I had done a presentation right before the ENnie Awards began. And there was supposed to be a green room that I could keep some stuff in. And I told my fans I was going to dress in my suit, my fedora for the Jack the NPC thing. If I won, I'd go up and I'd accept it. And that I wasn't going to do the speech as Jack because I want to be respectful of the thing, and this is, my day. And my hotel was far away, so I couldn't go back to my room. So I've got a suitcase in the green room, and I'm going to change awkwardly in a bathroom and run to the ENnies and do that. Well, the green room was closing, so they said, you can't leave your bag in here. And while I've got my backpack, because I had just done this big writing presentation, I've got this rolling backpack. And so I changed awkwardly in a bathroom at Gen Con. That was an experience. And then I have to run to the ENnies with like a carry-on suitcase and a backpack to this awards show, like bringing my luggage. And the crew from Chaosium, great guys, they asked me to sit with them, and they're sitting at the very front at a private table.
Of course, yes.
And so I come up there, and I'm sitting there, and Sandy Peterson's at the table next to me, and Mike Mason, they're all there. And I'm kind of awkwardly like, hey, guys, some of you don't know who I am. Let me just bring my luggage to your big fancy table. So I'm sitting there with like a suitcase between my knees, a backpack on the back. I'm like, oh my God, I'm taking up all this room. I'm the biggest jerk in the world. And then I was the first one called up. So I gave a very clumsy acceptance speech because, one, I really wasn't expecting to win because I'd seen some of the other stuff out there. But two, I'm so flustered because I've got all my luggage taking up Chaosium's table. So, I was kind of probably like this weird jerk. It's like, hey, sit with us, and I'm like, I'm going to move in. During the break, I was able to like hide it behind the stage.
Oh, that's good.
For the first half, I was awkwardly dominating like 2/3 of the space at this table that the entire Chaosium team is at. That was embarrassing. But the ceremony itself was great. I got to meet so many of the people that I've known online. Oscar Rios, Chris Spivey, and all these guys that made a ton of stuff that I've either reviewed or I've got that I want to review, and I'm fans of theirs. So that was cool. So most of the time I'm fanboying, and they're trying to congratulate me, and
that's great. What I obviously first got to know you as is on YouTube, and you do videos on generally tabletop role playing. I watch a lot of DMs on YouTube. First of all, because I really like this stuff, but I'm getting into like game mastering myself, and it's like, I would like to know the 3 broken ranger spells that will completely wreck the game, and stuff like that. And so I'm very interested in that. I came across your channel because I had actually just read what's it? Oh, now I'm blanking on the name of the stupid book. That Ernest Cline book. Oh, Ready Player One.
Oh God, great book.
Yeah, and there's like this massive section of it in the Tomb of Horrors.
That was my biggest disappointment in the movie. Is I wanted to see the Tomb of Horrors. Like
that's the reason I haven't watched the movie. Is a friend told me it's not in there, and I'm like, forget that.
And now, did you read the book or did you read the audiobook?
Audiobook.
Okay, because I kind of feel sorry when people are like, oh, I read it. It's like, oh, then you didn't get the Will Wheaton performance. That's what makes it twice as good.
Oh yeah, his reading was great.
And also there's this kind of like thing of like, Will Wheaton is reading the nerdiest book ever. And then when he starts talking about Star Trek and Will Wheaton, it just kind of has this added little flavor to it because you know who's reading it. So I was like, oh, you like the book? Yeah, you have to listen to it. Like, well, no, I could go to Barnes & Noble and pick it up. Like, no, I'm telling you, download the audiobook and listen to it. It's better.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. But like I did not grow up on tabletop role playing. I was from a household I wasn't allowed to play it, and so like Tomb of Horrors, it's like I have no idea. And so I went searching online and I found your review of it, and immediately it's like I noticed several things that kind of set you apart from a lot of the people that I watch and really love. Is first just and I think most importantly is the sheer practicality of it, of you actually going through and it's like, hey, this might be a stumbling part for your players. And so here's might be a couple of ways to explain it, to get around it, to change it. And as somebody who's getting into DMing again, it's like, that's really, really practical and helpful.
Well, you never know when you're writing these if anybody actually will find that helpful. One of the problems is when you've done it for as long as I have, you forget all those teeny little things that took you years and a lot of headaches to learn. Yeah, you're just like, well, just grab it and go. What are you talking about? And right. Then you have to go back and say, oh wait, let me rewind to how I looked at it at the time. One of the biggest tragedies to my scenario reviews, because I always play anything I review. That's kind of my policy, because I've read and watched too many reviews where they clearly had never played it. And
yes.
Those anger me on a very fundamental level, because they're giving raving or raging opinions about it, and they're so terribly wrong. But when I run them, they don't really go as smoothly as the review is, because the review has the hindsight of, well, now that I've screwed everything up, let me tell you how not to do what I did. So I think a lot of people watch my reviews and are like, God, you've got to be the greatest game master ever. It's like, no, just hindsight is 20/20. After the fact, I come up with a lot of those ideas. And I'll even mention it's like, well, this is the part where I screwed it up. So learn from my mistake.
And I actually found like one of the things that really illustrated for me is you were on the what is it called, the Into the Darkness podcast, and I think it was it Ladybug Fly Away Home that you played?
Yeah. That was my first game of Call of Cthulhu ever to play.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'd been GMing it for 2 years. I had never played it before.
Okay, that's a rabbit trail, but I warned you. We're fine on rabbit trails. That's one of the questions that both Steven and I had. Is like, is he ever a player character, or are you just the permanent game master?
It's kind of the GM curse, and since you're getting into game mastering, I'm going to tell you the curse. A few things happen. One, once people find out that they've got a game master, you are not really going to have a shortage of players as long as you live. But two, everybody else that might want to try their hand at it is like, nah, you've got it. So you are probably never going to GM. Also, people are threatened at GMing their game master.
Yeah.
Which is silly. I actually want to do a whole video on why that is silly.
That'd be great.
So one, they're going to be intimidated to. Two, it's just a hell of a lot easier for you to go ahead and do it, so that way they don't have to.
Right.
And three, it is its own form of fun. You're playing a game at a different level than they are. Mm-hmm. So for you, gaming will become the game mastering part. So that's the part you're going to crave.
Yes.
So you're gonna want to play, but when it comes down to it, if you got the choice, you're gonna run it, because that's what you've become comfortable with, and that's what you enjoy. So I very rarely get to play. I am not a good player, mostly because I am. I don't know. It's like I don't know what I'm doing half the time because it's so out of my normal role. And what's funny is I've chatted with a lot of the other creator game masters out there. Scott Dorward, who writes a lot of the Call of Cthulhu scenarios and does Good Friends of Jackson Live's podcast. He and I have talked, and he's like, he's British. I can't do a good British accent, but he's like, I'm a terrible player. I don't know how to play, because he's like me. He's just so used to GMing that when you're stuck in the player role, it's like, crap, I don't know what's behind the door. I always know what's behind the door. I'm never in the role of like, well, should we open it? I don't know. What the hell is back there? Maybe it's going to eat my face.
Wait, let me look at the book. Wait, I don't have the book.
So it's a weird sensation. So I'm sorry to tell you, now that you've started GMing, if you had any intention that you were going to play a lot, best of luck.
Yeah.
But statistics show that's not going to be the case.
No, and that's fine. I absolutely love GMing. I thought in general you did fine on that podcast, but spoilers, you did die. So.
I've now played 3 games of Call of Cthulhu. I got a 4th going on that we haven't finished yet. Scott Dorward's running us through the opening of Master Nyarlathotep. I have never survived a game of Call of Cthulhu.
That's awesome.
And we're doing Mass, and right now, from how it looks, I will probably keep my record of having never survived a game of Call of Cthulhu.
That's so great.
It's just how it works.
Well, and it's Call of Cthulhu, which, the odds are against you in there as well.
It is. And also when you're doing it as a one-shot, because I'm a believer that when it comes to one-shots, the kid gloves come off.
Right.
It's like... Exactly. These are standalone movies, and sometimes your heroes don't survive in a standalone movie. It's when you're doing a campaign and you've got your heart set on where they're going to go and all that, you're more likely to survive. The GM's not going to give you a horrific death at the end. But so between me not really being as good of a player as people think I will be, and the fact that I'm always doing one-shots, my survival rate is crap.
Back to Ladybug in particular, and not really to give much away, but there's a point in the adventure where y'all missed a clue, and it was I could tell it was frustrating for y'all, and it was frustrating for me listening to it, but it's like everything kind of ground to a halt, and no one knew what to do anymore, and that's where when you reviewed the game, you pick up with now having experienced it and say, okay, this might happen because it happens. Here are some ways to kind of help keep things on track. And that sort of stuff is for me is just fascinating and supremely helpful.
Well, because when you're reading them, if you're reading a pre-printed adventure, the order in which stuff is presented or how one thing leads to another seems pretty obvious because you're reading the book. And you don't see the characters literally have 100 doors in front of them. They're not going to know which one they're supposed to go through. And the rest of them all lead down rabbit holes or frustration. And so sometimes you play it and you don't see it till you hit it, and other times you get used to, as you're more comfortable running and reading and your players, you can gauge a lot of that beforehand. So that way you're prepared. But if you're not used to your players or you're not used to GMing, or sometimes you missed it when you read through and all of a sudden you're in the game and you're like, well, crap, there actually isn't a logical link between these two steps. So... And that's one of the things which I like to point out. I don't fault any GM for ever making a mistake because I got more under my belt than most. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the other things that for those who have not seen your channel, you have an amazing sidekick, Jack the NPC. Who's actually pictured as your channel icon. So I think, he's just officially surpassed you as the focal point of the channel. But Jack is you with a fedora.
Pretty
an
much.
Accent.
Or a space helmet or a fake mustache. It just depends on the genre of whatever I'm doing.
Gosh. And I have to say, my first videos of yours were all like classic AD&D stuff. And so Jack doesn't make a ton of sense. Not complete sense, where he's wearing a helmet and carrying a sword, but he's still got kind of that New York accent. And you're like, what's going on? And then you watch some Call of Cthulhu ones. You're like, oh, okay, I understand Jack now.
A lot of the times, because I start doing a lot of inside jokes, and occasionally I kind of wonder, it's like, this video might be the first one that somebody sees, and it is going to look like complete insanity to them. The Jack the NPC being a big one. Then I do another series where I've got 3 players sitting around a table that are all these kind of archetype or caricature sort of characters. So just about every one of those where they start talking about jokes that I gave a year before, at building on it or referencing, I'm like, if this is somebody's first episode, they are going to be so confused. They're going to think there's something truly wrong with me. And the comments verify that.
Well, and what I love about that is that in any given game, you do have multiple perspectives. You have the GM perspective, and you actually have the perspective of the player sitting at the table. But that perspective is different than the actual characters in the game. And I love that you have this kind of skit representation for each one. And that Jack can come in and explain, what happened in the game. And it's like, oh, and then, from our point of view, this was terrible, or this was great, and then you come back. It's like, well, from the DM point of view, it was ridiculous amounts of work. And do you have a name for like the table view with the 3 players?
No. If I had somebody else, I'm a complete one-man show. Yeah. If I had so much as a cameraman or some remote ability to edit correctly with movement, I wanted to do it in that kind of that 70s show style, where they're in the basement and the camera is spinning around so that they're on the table. Yeah. If you gave me a ridiculous budget for something as silly as this, I would actually have the camera spin around the table, that 70s show fashion, as they're talking.
That would be hilarious.
But I just lack the technical ability to do
right.
it.
Yeah. That would require a much bigger budget and possibly an editor and an extra cameraman or whatever. Oh, but yeah, those 3 are great, and you can kind of depict the differences in playing styles and even conflicts at the table with that I think is it really kind of brings that extra dimension to the stuff you're saying, especially when like you're getting into like a video about 4 mistakes DMs make, or 3 horrible players or characters or that sort of thing. That I find very entertaining, and those 3 characters crack me up nearly every time. So.
What's weird is the number of people that they'll see a couple videos and then they will mention that it took them a while to realize that they were all me, because I'm wearing like a 75-cent mustache. I mean,
well, that was the thing that gave it away for me.
They're so clearly fake, and the goatee that one of them is wearing. We had a kitten that just, no matter where I put it, she'd find this thing and she would chew on it. And so that goatee is so mangled. And yes, I could pick up another, but to me, it's more amusing that I don't. So if you look at it, and like, there's literally hairs just sticking every direction. And It's not like it was high quality to begin with, but it was also a kitten's chew toy that, I'd put it on top of this shelf, and the next day I look down and it's on the kitchen floor or something. And so those, and they also weren't meant to be reused, so I have to keep sticking more double-sided tape on the back of them. So I'm sure if this channel continues, one day everybody's going to have a brand new looking mustache because the old one's just kind of disintegrated. Right.
Yes. So what... Was there a point like early on where you decided, me sitting here talking about is not getting the full perspective. I need somebody to come in. I need a Jack character to come in and explain this for some other way and cause you to run out and buy a fedora. Or how did that come about?
It will shock you to know that I have made very few purchases when it comes to costuming.
I have a fedora in the other room. No judgments here.
Even the really lame shirt that one of the characters wears that it is so 90s, it's got like a tribal pattern on the shoulder. Yeah, that just came out of my closet. Yeah, but it was a slow evolution as far as the secondary characters. I think a lot of channels do the format where there's a guy sitting in a chair telling you what's what, and it's kind of boring just to watch somebody talk to you for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And so the Jack initially started as kind of like these little skits, kind of just a humorous little bit, or just to kind of make a short point. So I did one Jack review, and then I did like one or maybe two other Call of Cthulhu reviews. And I was like, man, I preferred it where I could actually cut and then go to Jack. Mm-hmm. Also, at the time, it hadn't quite dawned on me that you could just make a jump cut in the middle of a YouTube video and it not bother anybody. So I would talk very slowly and carefully because I didn't want to mess up, because there were no cuts. I would use slides to break up where I flubbed a line or I had to drink some water or something. So having the Jack skits allowed me to put more cuts in. So I didn't have to go 3 minutes without saying a word incorrectly, because especially when you're doing fantasy RPGs, some of the words these people use, geez. And so it came from that, just like, let me break it up and do that. And then the characters around the table came about, which I had a skit that I wanted to do. And I'm actually going to revisit this subject eventually, because my early videos, in addition to the fact my mic quality and everything was terrible, I hadn't quite learned how to articulate points correctly. So I would get a lot of rebuttals to them. It's like, I'm clearly not expressing what I wanted to say. But I did a skit over what I call the 13th Warrior. And the 13th Warrior is a character who does not fit into the campaign whatsoever. Oh, and yes. It's a reference to the movie, which is based off a Michael Crichton novel, which I love both of them a lot. But I always joked with my friends that it's like, this is the story that Michael Crichton had done a ton of research. He wanted to do the greatest Viking campaign of all time. And then one of his players was like, well, I want to play this Arab poet.
Right, yes.
And Michael Crichton's like, well, I want to get into their culture and I want to get deep, and you need to be in one of these characters to be invested in it, to really go for it. And, this is the theme we're going for. It's like, nope, I want to play an Arab poet. So he has to kind of shoehorn an Arab poet in there. And this is a reference to, we would do theme campaigns, and sometimes you do have that one player that just refuses to join in the theme.
Right. Yeah.
And we just called them 13th Warriors. So I wanted to do the skit of the player saying, I want to be this Arab poet. So at the time I had a ponytail, so I just let my hair down and put a baseball cap on backwards and talked in this kind of surfer bro voice. And that was so much fun that I ended up using him for a while. And then eventually I needed to have other players for him to talk to. So I came up with 2 more for him to talk to. So now I've got this whole cast, but they were all born out of a necessity.
Yeah.
And on some of them, had I known that I was committing myself to them, I wouldn't have done them the way that I did them. One of them has this horrible comb over that requires I put like half a pound of gel in my hair, just to do it. And it annoys me. And the original Jack the NPC voice was a whole lot deeper. I couldn't maintain it for a long period of time, and it goes on a rant. So I used to have tons of outtakes of me like suddenly break out in a fit of coughing because I was trying to talk too deep. So it's kind of eased down a bit so I could do a longer and longer takes with them without, dying halfway through.
Right. Exactly.
And with those, I don't ever make a cut. There's never a jump cut when Jack's talking. It's always one take of whatever rant it is. And sometimes they can get long, but there was never any master plan of, I'm going to make a channel and I'm going to do this and I'm going to have these characters and I'm going to do these little skits and I'm going to dress up and it's going to be goofy. It was, I'm going to make a channel and I'm going to talk about gaming and let me try this. I think I'd like to try that. And it was just kind of a lot, very experimental.
Right.
And thankfully those experiments have been successful. Versus, you do them like, this is going to be so bad, and this is going to be the only time I ever do it. And they ended up being fun, and I could work with them. But then I could regret, I was like, why did I choose that as the gimmick I was going to do? So, because I eventually cut off my ponytail, so then I had to like steal one of my wife's wigs for that character, the long-haired character, the baseball cap, to keep wearing. And that was also my favorite baseball cap. So for a long time, it lived in my costume closet. I never had a baseball cap anymore. Or I wanted to film, and then I'm tearing apart the car, looking all over the house, going, where the hell did I set my cap?
Right.
Because I only own one cap for some reason. So I now own a second, bought just for him. It took me like 2 years to buy a second baseball cap.
Well, yeah, and I don't imagine when you first start the channel that you imagine yourself like at the end of Two-Headed Serpent, with Jack with a serpent mask on, in a wig and a dress, and it's some of the funniest Jack scenes I think in any of the videos I've seen. They're just great.
You know what stinks is the Two-Headed Serpent is not a very popular series that I've done, and it's actually the one that I'm the most proud of.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. It's one of my favorites years.
It is, it to me is some of my very best work. And because it's, one, it's not just Call of Cthulhu, it's Pulp Cthulhu. So I'm narrowing down the demographic of people that would be interested in it. And then it's this newer campaign. There's actually very popular Call of Cthulhu campaigns out there, and I went with one that was not the rock star like Massive Nyarlathotep. We played this other one. So, and then I'd tell people, do not watch these unless you've played it. So that I snipped off a little bit more of a potential audience. Yeah. So it's like, this is my best work, and I chose as my subject matter something that limited my audience very much. But those were a lot of fun. That was a great campaign. I highly recommend it. But when I started it, I did not expect, by the end of the series, I'm going to be wearing a dress and a wig and a little hat and a snake mask. And I'm going to have my wife to help me with my makeup so I can get my eyeliner on right.
I think, I mean, you say, stuff like that kind of limits the audience of the video. But I mean, it's stuff like that drew me, and I think draws a lot of your fans to you, because, it's like the day some Dungeons and Dragons module comes out, people are doing in-depth reviews as though they've played a second of it, and I just took, like, what got me to your channel was you reviewing a 25-30-year-old campaign that, it's like you don't think right off the top of your head. It's like, there's going to be a huge demand for me to review, first edition AD&D modules. Better get on that. But there is. Yeah. But people like me are there and do like that stuff.
And one of the things that I really like about where the industry has gone now is because of PDFs and the internet culture, we are now going back and looking at those older scenarios. Used to, a new edition of a book came out. They stopped printing the previous one. Mm-hmm. And so many of those great adventures, like the really good ones, were kind of just lost to time. So unless you came across it somewhere, you never knew about it. And now we've got, Drive-Thru RPG, and with the old first edition stuff, they're doing print on demand so people can hold the book again. Yeah. They're not having to because they didn't have PDFs back in the day, so the only way to play it is to get the physical book. Well, now you're playing eBay collector prices. So you're like, well, I want to play Ravenloft, but I want to pay $60 for a module to play Ravenloft. So they're like, well, now you can go pay like $5 for the PDF and play Ravenloft if you don't want to buy the original collector version. So they are becoming more relevant, but also they're reprinting them. If updated for the new editions, Ravenloft, they did the big campaign expansion. the White Plume Mountain, Tomb of Horrors. Those are going to be. I did Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh. That was one of my very first AD&D reviews, and it was a very unknown module. Like, it was not popular in the U.S. like those others were, but it was one of my personal favorites. So it was one of the first ones I chose. And then, lo and behold, 5th edition comes out with Ghosts of Saltmarsh, which includes that. It's like, you guys aren't even just going for what was really insanely popular at the time. You've got a crew that's choosing the wheat from the chaff as far as the old scenarios, because there were a lot of bad old ones, but there were also a lot of gems that kind of got lost. So those reviews, I didn't know that one would become popular, because I thought, this is a 35-year-old module that wasn't popular 35 years ago.
Right, yeah.
I doubt there's going to be this huge audience. It's like, finally, somebody does the Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh. I've been waiting. I'm a grandfather now, and now I get to know what it is. So, and then Call of Cthulhu and Traveler and all of those that are those old games, they are bringing all that stuff back in newer editions. So, a lot of those old modules suddenly do become relevant again. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that got me really on like a tabletop kick was being involved in a podcast where we're playing through Curse of Strahd, and I had been just this massive fan of like the Dragonlance novels. Never actually played any of it, but it's like, oh yeah, I know Ravenloft. That was written by Tracy Hickman, and that's all I know about it. I've never played this thing, but I just know Tracy Hickman. But playing that really makes me want to go back to the original and check it out. And so, the stuff they're doing to kind of, I guess, pump up the nostalgia factor and make some of us who are newer to the game want to go back and play the old stuff. It's working for me, and so they'll probably get my money for a PDF of Ravenloft at some point.
Ravenloft was a game changer, in my opinion, because prior to Ravenloft, the AD&D scenarios were pretty much you have a dungeon or a tower or a castle or whatnot, and almost no reason why you're there. It was just like, well, here's a dungeon, go for it. And it was pretty much you go through and you kill monsters and you take their items, and then at the end is a super big monster and you kill it and you take its items, and then you're done. Ravenloft had this really cool story, and it actually had replayability because there were certain aspects that could change as they drew cards from a deck. It changed where everything was. So that was such a wildly creative thing at the time, as no one had seen anything like this. Also, it was a gothic horror instead of a Lord of the Rings ripoff. Yeah. So that also made it different. Those are the ones. If you go back and you look through a lot of the modules, you can see like some of them where this was the groundbreaking moment, that where the hobby went 20 years later, this was the moment that branch started. Or and sometimes they're not even good adventures, in my opinion. I talked about one of us called Tomb of the Lizard King. I didn't like that adventure. But it did do a lot of stuff that hadn't been done before. So it still made this contribution, even though it itself wasn't that good. It started a new path for people to forge down, and that led to great stuff. So, and then was the Village of Hamlet? I don't think that's a great adventure, but man, the influence that it gave was phenomenal. And where the PCs have a town that they're in, and all these people, and that was groundbreaking for its time. It's just what came after it was far superior than what it itself was. Ravenloft, that kicked down the door and just was superior. So definitely check that one out. Have you finished Curse of Strahd?
No, we haven't.
Okay, then don't check it out.
Oh yeah, yet. No, I'm not going to check it out yet.
Okay. Don't be all like, hey guys, I read the module. Seth told me I could. No.
Oh, and I would totally blame you too. I'm sorry, Seth said.
Wait on that one and don't watch my review for it yet. No.
Gotcha.
I give a spoiler warning for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, it's like there's been a few other a few other podcasts who have done that adventure too, and it's like I have them all written down because as soon as I'm done, I'm buying the stupid book. I'm going to buy Ravenloft. I'm listening to everything because I want to know all the different paths that we could have done and failed to. So,
it's one of the things when it comes to pre-written scenarios is a lot of people don't like them, and some of the reasons that they give are like, well, everybody's going through the exact same thing. If somebody plays Ravenloft, it's just like somebody else playing Ravenloft. Or someone goes through Tomb of Horrors, it's just like somebody else going through Tomb of Horrors. It's like, no, it's never the case. I've run certain adventures multiple times, and the results of what happened were so wildly different than one another that, so when you read the adventure, you say, this is the stuff we missed, but it did not take into account what we thought would be the most obvious thing in the world and where we were. Then you're going to think, wow, my GM must have really been kind of like I'm flying off the cuff there. It's like, I would have nobody in the history of this game in 40 years has ever done that one ridiculous thing that you guys thought would be the best thing to do. And now your GM has done it. So now you're going to read it. You're going to be disappointed that wasn't ever in there. I've had that.
One of the things that's interesting is the one Cthulhu game I have run was Dockside Dogs, which is based on Reservoir Dogs, and it's the reason I wanted to run it is because I had a bunch of people who didn't play Call of Cthulhu, and I just pretended like it wasn't a Call of Cthulhu game until halfway through and everything got weird, and they were like, what's going on? I thought we were in a Tarantino movie. And, but I've listened to 3 actual play adventures of it, and it's just one shot, so it's not like a long campaign. It's a one shot, and I've listened to 3 actual play podcasts of it, and I run it myself, and every single time it played out very differently. And it's one of the cool things about it. And it's one of the things I really love. And so that was a lot of fun doing that. Especially when, watching everybody freak out. And it's like, yeah, we're in a Cthulhu game. Sorry, guys.
I'm not familiar with this one. Where is it?
It might be on Drive-Thru.
Was it like a standalone, or was it in a collection? Okay. Yeah,
no, it was just a standalone, and it's it really, I mean, the first half of it is essentially recreating Reservoir Dogs. Kind of same scenario. You're in a warehouse. The robbery has gone horribly wrong, and you're just waiting to be picked up.
Okay, because I'm definitely have to check out. One, I want to do more. Is it a modern era?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it's set the same time as Reservoir Dogs, so like 90s.
Oh my God. Okay, so I need to check this one out.
Yeah. And I made everybody wear suits and thin ties and stuff. It was pretty fantastic.
I used to do that, and now that we're all in our 40s, I'm just happy they can make it.
Well, that's one of the things. It's like it was like I was wondering, kind of like how does he? I mean, I know you've been doing this a long time. He's like, how does he get through all these? And then at one point, I heard you say that when y'all do play, it's pretty much an all day thing.
Yeah, we start playing. Well, okay, we start playing at noon. We usually spend the first hour BSing and all catching up with each other and talking about our lives and what movies we watched. Sometimes 2 hours. And then we play until midnight-ish. Mm-hmm. So sometimes they'll get out early, and then other times we've gone till 2 a.m. Then I'm looking at my friends like, guys, are you good to drive home, or do we need to turn this into a sleepover? And because if you fall asleep and die on the way home from our game, I'm going to feel really, really bad. So,
yes.
And they never take me up on it, because I'm like, oh, we have a sleepover, we'll watch some R-rated movies and put the sleeping bags out on the living room floor. And they're like, no, I want to go home to my bed. But so, yeah, we do very long marathon games, but because they're long marathon games, they're not really locked in and focused.
Yeah.
Versus, people like, we've only got 3 hours to play. They play 3 hours very solid and they stick to it. Ours are kind of chaotic in the sense that, then all of a sudden we segue into somebody talking about a vacation they took 3 years ago. And we chat about that for a bit. Then I have to like kind of, tap my watch and we get back to the game. But they're long, but we only really get to play our campaign once a month.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then if I might be able to do a squeeze a one shot in for another day that month, but we don't get to play very often. The bygone days of weekly games are years behind us.
Yeah, that's the game I'm GMing is a Star Wars game, and it's like half of us have kids, and so it's like we manage once a month, and it's online, and so it's not even in person, but that's what we can do. And I'm like, and listeners can't see me, but you can see me, and it's like, okay, here's the desk, here's the wall. And this giant Star Wars book is one of those 450-page hardbacks that I'm like trying to manage to look up here and set it on my keyboard, I guess.
Now, so are you doing the Fantasy Flight Star Wars? It's
the Edge of the Empire one.
So I wanted to play that, and I thought that I was clever. And so when we finished Two-Headed Serpent, I told my players, I want to do a palate cleanser. I want to play something next that is just nothing at all like what we just played.
Yeah.
And so we're like, okay, well, we could do classic fantasy. And so we're like, okay, we could do Rune Quest or the new Conan. Conan ended up winning on that one. But one of the ones I threw out was Star Wars. And one of my players is in the 501st. He has the full Stormtrooper armor that is the movie accurate because they have to vet it to show that it's properly movie accurate to be approved by the 501st. And then he's got his Mandalorian armor. And I'm like, dude, you could run Star Wars because he's the huge Star Wars nerd. He's got his Star Wars tattoos.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to do reviews by borrowing your Stormtrooper armor, and I'm going to wear Stormtrooper armor as my Jack the NPC things. Like, this is so win-win. I get to play. I don't have to run the thing and learn the rules. And I get to have your sweet armor for my reviews. This is win-win. And he was like, yeah, I'll do it. And he never did. So, because that's the GM's lament of you never get to play. I actually have Star Wars dice I picked up. I was so excited that when I was at a game shop, I'm like, I'm going to buy Star Wars dice. That way, when we get to play our Edge of the Empire game, I got my dice. And he's like, no, life got really busy. I haven't picked it up yet. And it's like, oh, well, I'll just have the set of dice I get to look at. And remember that time I naively thought that I was going to get to play.
Oh, that's fantastic. The Fantasy Flight dice is probably the coolest part of the game because it never lets you do just a straight success roll or a failure roll. It's always got to throw something weird in it, and it makes for nothing goes quite as planned. Put it that way. It's like there's always some sort of thing that happens off to the side because you'll get like a success, but an advantage. And so the advantage is not what you were trying to do, but something else that happened because of it that is to your benefit. And so they end up like, blasting the Stormtrooper down, and then he falls on the shield generator and it turns off or something goofy like that. And it's every single roll is like that. And it makes it really, really kind of entertaining. You're
really just rubbing it in that I didn't get to play this. Sorry, man. I just want you to know that
you're more than welcome to join our online game. I'll send you the link.
I'm the guy that missed that really great concert, and you're the guy's like, oh my God, then he set himself on fire. And it was so cool. It was the greatest concert ever. I'm like, great, thanks.
This is how I feel every time I watch a video of like your classic AD&D stuff.
I do have another classic I'm working on right now.
Oh, cool.
Which is I started my read through because a lot of those classic ones, I I think the most recently any of those I had ever run when I gave the review was Secret of Bone Hill, because we did that one with 5th edition rules. But some of the others, it's like, I haven't looked inside this book in 15 years.
Oh, yeah.
So now I've got to read it and, and remember what it was we did, but also remember it from, or look at it from my current eyes versus, you have to wipe away nostalgia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which
is the big one, because when I was 15, I might have thought it was genius because I was 15. And,
right.
and now that I'm looking at it, it's like, well, this really actually isn't that impressive. It was just, it impressed me at the time because I had never seen anything like it. But now that I've seen stuff like it that was either older or far newer, not that great. So a lot of the old grognards, they get mad when I criticize those classic adventures, which stinks because they're 90% of the demographic that is going to be watching a classic AT&T review.
Right, yeah.
And I'm like, today we're going to talk about this great classic that you grew up on and you have so many happy memories of, and now I'm going to knife it. They get a little defensive. I was very worried about when I did what was that one called? We just talked about it. A Tomb of Horrors. Of like, oh man, I'm going to get so much internet hate. Because you can't talk about that adventure without internet hate. Either this is the worst adventure of all time or this is the greatest adventure of all time. And those are pretty much the two opinions that you will find about that particular module. Of either this is a work of staggering brilliance straight from Gary Gygax, the godfather of gaming, and there is nothing wrong with it. Or this is the biggest steaming pile of crap that has ever happened. It was a scam and it was a lie and it is miserable. Those are the two opinions, and there's not really anything in between those two. So when you talk about it, I took the brilliant approach of I'm going to praise it. So therefore I now have the hate of the people that hate it. Mm-hmm. And then I am going to criticize it and stab it a few times. So now I've got the hate from the people that love it. Yeah,
that's good strategy. Just piss everybody off.
I'm going to walk directly in the middle between those two camps and just let them all shoot at me. So it took me a long time to kind of work up the nerve to even do that video.
Yeah.
Because, when you're on YouTube, I get notifications on my phone when people leave comments. And it took me a long time to learn that in the morning when I wake up to make my coffee, drink my coffee, and then open up my phone and be ready for what happens. Because the worst comments that make you think I should stop doing this, I'm a failure in everything I've ever tried, those people comment at 3 a.m. So when you're half awake and you kind of stagger and you're making your coffee and it's percolating and you're like, oh, my phone's flashing. Let me check my messages. Let's see what updates I have. And it's like, you suck. Your brain's not even firing yet. It's like, well, wow, my day just started off pretty poorly. So it took me about 2 years to figure out I will make coffee. I will get dressed. I will do all these things. And then I will open up my phone to see just whether it's good or bad. But, I learned the hard way. Sometimes you're just not awake enough for it.
Right,
and when you criticize something old and loved, you are going to get hate no matter what you say.
Yeah, when I was doing more videos and I didn't really get much viewership on any of them until I defended Zack Snyder, a movie. And then I got a lot of traffic and people arguing in my thing. But
Zack Snyder is a freaking genius. I'm going to go ahead and put that on record.
Nice. So you'll get now all the hate that I got when I said the same thing.
Well, okay, let's flip over to Zack Snyder real fast because my first movie of his I saw was Dawn of the Dead.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And I am a massive George Romero fan. I love the original Dead trilogy. Secretly, though, the 1989 remake of Dawn of the Dead that he produced was better than the original. But you'll just keep that between you and me. We'll cut this out of the podcast. But I'm a huge fan.
I'll remember to do that.
Yeah, sure. And we used to do these zombie games that followed the rules of it. And so we had a lot of fun. the Dawn of the Dead remake came out, and we watched it. And I usually hate remakes, especially if they're of cherished movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they can't win because your nostalgia glasses and your love of the original, whatever they're trying to do, has got such an uphill climb before you can even consider it acceptable. And that movie blew me away. But it's Zack Snyder's use of music. Where he does the opening credits. He tells a story to an unbroken song. He gives an entire Johnny Cash song, not just like a couple of cool little chords of it, and that's it. And then Watchmen, the opening credits of that, I want them to make an Academy Award just for opening title sequences.
That's not a bad idea.
I stole that from Cracked. That wasn't my idea, but I think Zack Snyder would rake that in every time. Between Watchmen and Sucker Punch and a lot of his movies, he's able to tell a very long, detailed story very concisely to music. His use of music is just brilliant. I mean, he doesn't always hit 100. Steven Spielberg he did that Indiana Jones movie, with Kali Ma, Temple of Doom. So,
right, yeah.
No director is perfect, but I think Zack Snyder is brilliant, and I think a lot of the hate that he gets are the same people that secretly like Nickelback while they tell everybody that they don't like Nickelback. He's just popular to hate on, but no, I think he's great.
Yeah, it's Sucker Punch is actually a personal favorite of mine, and his use of long musical pieces that start weaving in like psychedelic version of great 70s tunes and stuff. It's like, and it just flows directly with the scene. It's like, that's just darn impressive.
And so I can't get my wife to see a movie except for maybe once a year. We had a bad run of about 3 or 4 years where every movie we saw in theaters was a massive disappointment. So, or something happened, like kids threw popcorn on her or something, and she's like, "Why do I?" Yeah, that sort of deal. That was our last movie we went to, so it's probably going to be 3 years before I get into a theater again. Sucker Punch, she saw in theaters twice.
Nice.
Because she loved that movie so much. And then like the day that it came out on disc, I bought her a copy of it. And then a friend of mine borrowed that copy and she wanted to watch it. And I got in trouble because I loaned out her copy of the movie. So I had to go buy another copy of the movie. And then my friend returned it. So I own 2 copies of Sucker Punch. I own the soundtrack to Sucker Punch. She loves it. So
I do want to grab that soundtrack. I haven't gotten it yet, but it's great.
It's a great soundtrack. But, that movie, people didn't like it. It's like, okay, you've got the trenches of World War I with steampunk, like zombie Germans in a giant mech with a bunny painted on the nose. How is this not the greatest? Like, this is my ultimate dream when I was 15. I'm finally seeing what 15-year-old me would have considered the greatest thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Ever.
That's the scene I actually used to sell people on it. Cause it's like, I'm sitting there in the theater and it's like, all right, we're in trenches of World War II. We're going to shoot Nazis. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm on board. But they're not alive. They're running on steam and clockwork. I'm like, cool. Okay. And here's a giant mech. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is great.
Yeah, and you shoot them and the steam spraying out, and then the giant bomber going around, and the orcs are catapulting themselves at it, and she's shooting at a dragon with a 50 cal. It's like, how is this not the greatest movie ever made? So
exactly.
So I will stand beside you in front of the firing squad as far as I like Zack Snyder.
Yeah. But I turned off the notifications on my phone because it was making me anxious. It's like, I was the guy who made videos that did 30 views, and then, all of a sudden I was in the thousands, and I wasn't ready. I was not ready for that.
When my channel picked up, it was the exact same thing. I did a video that I did not do well. This is the period of time where I didn't know how to articulate my thoughts right, especially considering how people would take what I said. Mm-hmm. And twist it. This is things you learn the hard way. And it was the video where I talked about that 13th Warrior thing.
Yeah.
And somehow it got on, it just blew up one day. And it was like this 6.5-month-old video, and my channel exploded one day. So I went from nobody's watching it to everybody's watching it, and everybody hates me. And that was where I learned the valuable lesson of do not look at your notifications until after coffee and you're sitting down. Or if you want to smile for the next 20 minutes, don't look at those and then get behind the wheel of a car.
Right. Yeah.
Make sure you're sitting.
Yeah. Okay, so we're a little over time of what I said. I did want to ask real quick.
Are we finally going to get to starting? Let's begin.
If somebody's just starting off on their channel, what should they check out first? And I have an opinion on this myself, but I'm curious where you think somebody should start.
If they're like just watching my stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, don't plug another channel.
Whoa. Okay. Well, yeah. What's weird is real fast. Like when I go to these writing conventions and we talk about writing technique, I have a hard rule. I never talk about my own books up there because I've been on so many panels that all people do is talk about their own books, like plugging them. So yeah, I immediately go to
my last question is actually about your books because I'm almost done with Dameron. And really, really enjoying it. But
oh, thank God. If somebody wants to check out my channel, and this is where I'm going to plug the ones that I think are the good ones, but evidently they don't have the views. If they're a player, I would suggest character backstories. I think that's actually one of the most helpful player videos that I've done. Just talking about how to craft a backstory that a game master can use and how to approach their backstory. That way everybody is happy with the result of it getting used and your expectations versus theirs.
Yeah.
And speaking of expectations, the RPG social contract is what I kind of call my foundation of my entire philosophy of gaming, which ultimately comes down to you're there. Just expect to have fun. Don't put the game as it must be this good to be remotely entertaining. And your job is, since you know you're going to be entertained, is to make sure everybody else has a good time. And I think 99% of all the problems that happen in games are because people forget to not just have fun, but make sure everybody else is having fun. And whenever I do my goofy lists of the 5 worst and stuff, most of the time that can just be summed up with they didn't do the social contract. So
yep.
If you're into playing or being a game master, probably my RPG philosophy, except for the social contract, most of those are just fun and funny. But as far as helpful, God, what would that be? Probably my GM toolbox stuff. Those are like short little, like I try to keep them under like 7 minutes if I can. It's usually like, here's a goofy thing you can try that we had a lot of fun with, like put a sheet of plexiglass down on your table, which in our circle of friends, the joke was you're not a game master till you own a plexiglass. and people would come up to me and like they'd hold up this plexiglass they bought at the hardware store. Like it was the greatest thing of their lives. It's like,
that's awesome.
Like, you go. I know what that means, but to anyone else, you probably look like a dork that you're that proud of a sheet of plexiglass.
Right.
Then again, if they say it's for D&D, everybody's going to know they're a dork. So never that's.
yeah, that doesn't help at all. It just confirms it. Oh, so that's great. I did. The social contract was the one that I suggest to a lot of people. I thought that was. It was a lot of fun of a video, but it was also really, really helpful. And actually, it helped me as I was getting into game mastering the, kind of focus things a bit.
Well, it's good for people just to kind of hear it. And the truth is everybody has those same expectations, but nobody articulates it. So sometimes you're unhappy with the game and you don't know why. or you're unhappy with another player or the game master, and you don't know why, because it's an unspoken thing. Nobody actually ever said, this is what our expectations are of each other. So that's where a lot of the frustration happens.
And so I think my Kindle said I'm 82% of the way through Dameron, and really enjoying it. But you do have several books out, kind of urban fantasy. It seems like, do you would tell us just briefly about that? I know we've spent all the time on YouTube.
But as far as tell you about Dameron, or am I writing in general, or
in general?
Well, I've got 2 series currently in print. I've got another book that will be coming out shortly. I just finished a week of editing on that one. We just did first round edits, so I've got a completely new thing coming out soon. But nice. My first one it's not novels, it's collections of short stories, and it's what I call my Black Raven series, which those are very pulpy sword and sorcery thief adventures, which I went through the tropes like a checklist. Yeah, so
nice.
and they were actually some of my earliest stuff. Those just took forever before I could get them assembled. So a lot of them were printed in different magazines for years. And then I've got a completely different series, which is my Valdekin Urban Fantasy series. And that one is, they're modern day monster hunters that have magic weapons. And the concept is we're going to take the classic monsters from folklore, and instead of saying it's a virus or a different race, it's now defined as a demonic possession. So if the demon gets in somebody, they transform into a werewolf. And the only way to kill the body of the werewolf is to use whatever element it is, like a silver bullet, but then the spirit just moves on to the next host. And you didn't actually kill the werewolf. You just killed some poor sap that was possessed. So the only way to kill it is with these magic weapons that my heroes do. And essentially, they're almost like superheroes, because each character with their magic weapon has some cool power that weapon allows them to do. That is a fun series. And those are the ones I recommend to people, because the Black Raven stuff is like, if you like really old school sword and sorcery thief adventures, like you love Fritz Lieber stuff, you'll like those. But outside of that, you should read my urban fantasy. That's good stuff.
Yeah, and I'll definitely keep going in that series, because I've really enjoyed book 1.
Oh well, I'll happily tell you that I get better.
Oh, nice!
As a writer.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So sometimes I do look back at certain things I did at Dameron, and I'm like, man, I was a guy that didn't know what he was quite doing yet, or so when we did a re-release, I had to switch publishers because my old publisher went down in flames, and I had to release with a new one. And stuff is already locked into the audiobook, so I can't really do any big changes. I'm like, God, I wish I could half this section, or this scene. Right. I wish I could completely redo this scene. It's like, but that's actually the lament of all authors. You could edit to the end of time. Part of the problem with, or why I like my own audiobooks, is because I can actually enjoy my audiobooks without still trying to edit them. I can just sit back and listen. Versus if I try to read one of my own books, my eyes see previous versions of scenes, or the way that I wanted to do it, or I'm still trying to I could rearrange this phrasing of the sentence and that'd be a lot punchier. But with the audiobook, I could just listen and sit back. And I know a lot of authors that have talked about that as like, I can't read my own stuff. It's like, but I can listen to it. It's like,
that's interesting. That's kind of how I edit. Is I just have Word read my books to me, and because I'll sit there and read a sentence all day long and not read what I wrote down on that paper, but 500 different versions and what I meant at the same time. Yeah, and it'll just be blatant mistakes in it, and it's like, no, I'm not doing it at all. But Word reads it to me, and I hear it.
Well, it's one of those things which you always have to tell authors is, especially now that self-pub is a viable thing. Self-pub used to be the dirtiest thing on earth, and now it's
Right,
actually, we don't have time. I could tell you all sorts of great stories how the industry looked at it, but now that it's a viable thing and it's a force to be reckoned with, I always tell people, like, you need to pay the good money to get a good editor. I don't care how much you think you can edit yourself. It is scientifically impossible to do it because it has to do with how psychology of perception works. Like, you read a sentence that is so ridiculously incorrect, but your brain knows what it's supposed to say. So your brain tells you that it's exactly what it says. It's like those little things that show up on Facebook where all the letters are screwed up. And it's like, if you can read this, it shows that you're very creative. Well, that's how editing brain works. So you can't physically see that you screwed up every single word in that sentence, and it looks like it was by a drunk child. So you need to hand it off to an editor to look at it with fresh eyes and go, "What are you thinking?"
Yeah, one of the things I do, and this happens 100% of the time, I have never written the word kneeling and not written knelling.
I am incapable of spelling restaurant.
Yeah.
There are certain words that every author talks about that they're incapable of doing. So yours is kneeling. Mine is restaurant.
But do you at least misspell it so Word catches it for you? Because knelling is a word, and so Microsoft Word is like, yeah, no, you wrote that right. Good job.
Well, okay, so I'll tell you a second one. But restaurant, I misspell so badly that Microsoft Word has no idea what to do to it. I mean, it's not like it's slightly off. It is just my own word that I made up one day that I think looks like restaurant. The other one that always gets me is though and through.
Oh, yeah.
So I've finally gotten in the habit when I'm done with a manuscript, I just do a find all of those, and I will see how many times they walked though the door or, or something like that, because Word can't figure that out. It thinks it's correct. And then,
right, exactly, yeah.
And the worst thing on earth is if that hits print, you will find that typo within 40 seconds of you're like, I'm holding my printed book. I am officially an author. And page 1 right there, first sentence. It's like, I can't believe this happened.
Yeah. Gosh. I self-published some books, and I had a guy who read through the entire series and really liked it, and on Amazon made comments with every single typo in every single book.
Oh God, I've had that. I've had that, and what sucks is we actually did a revision later on, and those got removed, but that review is still there. Yeah. Oh man, I hate those. I feel for you there. I hate those. And what's weird is I give reviews, and now I'm connected to a lot of the authors of these RPG games that I'm reviewing.
Sure, yeah.
And there's always a moment of terror of like, is this going to be the review where I brought up something that I thought was innocent that is going to get them that horror of a bad review? It was a positive review, but I did cut it on it a little bit. A scenario called Cracked and Crooked Mance by Mark Morrison. I like Mark. I've known him for a long time, and I didn't know that I accidentally dropped it on his birthday. So my review goes out there kind of cutting on it. And then, the Facebook or Twitter or whatnot is like, hey, tell him happy birthday. It's like, huh, what are the chances that this would be the day I decided to drop a kind of a scathing review of something he did 25 to 30 years ago? Like, hey, just a reminder, you made a mistake on the thing you did back in the 80s. So
happy birthday.
He's a wonderful gentleman, and he loved the fact people were still talking about it. But I was imagining what it would be like from my point of view if 25 years later I got a bad review on a short story that I did at some some magazine
exactly.
somewhere. But then again, I'd also be like, man, I'm happy people are still talking about this. I'd be thrilled. So I think that's what he had at that point. Versus if it was brand new and the first review is, it stinks because God,
right?
Those hurt on a fundamental level. I mean, no one's ever criticized my stuff poorly. I've never had a bad review. I'm that good. No, I imagine what it would be like to get a bad review.
Oh goodness. Well, I've kept you way over. I apologize for that, but I've had a blast. Thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. This was fun.
Yeah. All right. So, gonna put links for everything in the show notes page, but, you have the easiest last name in the world to spell. And so people should be able to find you on their own, with no help at all.
If they have, you can just cut and paste it in Google and boom, there I am. So.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like,
hey.
Oh, hey, you're back.
Hey, man. Is it over? Can I still hop on or?
Oh yeah, no, we just ended. It was really good. I mean, I recorded it for you.
Oh well, I'd love to listen to it. Yeah.
How did the interview go with the real estate place?
I don't know, man. I don't know if I want to talk about it.
What? It was that bad?
Dude, these guys. This one guy in particular was wearing sunglasses and he just kept yelling and screaming at me and. It was really intense, and it scared the crap out of me.
Are they? They're just a little too hardcore.
I mean, he was pointing a gun at my face.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! How do you get in with these people?
It was just an ad. I saw the billboard. I saw the sign. It looked like they needed people to come work for them. I went in the office, and this guy just busts out of the door, points this gun in my face, and. It was really difficult. I just left.
Yeah, that's actually probably wise. But we do need to wrap up. So thank y'all so much for joining us. Seth, thanks so much. That was an absolute blast, talking with you. And so, hope to have you on, again in the future. And so, if you're not on Discord with us, please check out the link in the notes. Our server's called the Technoverse, and we are having a lot of fun over there. But yeah, just, we'll be back next week and for episode 99, which is kind of exciting and daunting.
Yeah,
so
that's crazy. Hopefully
awesome.
It's not as crazy as my interview.
Yeah, I know, probably not. So awesome. We appreciate it, and we will talk to y'all later.
Later.
The Retro Zoo Super Show is brought to you by the Techno Funk Boy. Follow us on Twitter at Techno Funk Boy, on Facebook at the Techno Funk Boy, and sign up for our email list at technofunkboy.com. Also look for us on Spotify, iTunes, and Amazon for music. If you are so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast catcher. If you are not so inclined, you are obviously some sort of villain trying to conquer the world. Unowned music and gameplay clips are used for educational and critical purposes. Thank you for listening. Keep gaming. Unless you have responsibilities that need to be done at this time, then you can game